Welcome to the game. Avoidants live for puzzles. They're addicted to distance, obsessed with solving others, while keeping themselves unsolved. But here's the catch. They cannot resist what they cannot categorize. Their entire defense system collapses when you stop chasing, stop proving, and become the one thing they hate and crave the most, a mystery. Maybe it's time for you to stop playing this game in survival mode and start blowing shit up in this love's game. After all, why should avoidants have all the fun? You've bent yourself into pretzels, trying to earn their closeness. You've written love letters with your silence, begged through your patience, and suffocated in the waiting, yet they only run further. So here's the truth you were never told. Stop auditioning for love. Stop giving them the cheat codes. Become the riddle they cannot solve, and watch how the avoidant who once ghosted you starts haunting you. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to do that. How to flip the script, reclaim your power, and become the one thing an avoidant will chase until their dying breath. Chapter 1. Avoidants are addicted to the hunt. Let's be honest. Avoidants don't fall in love with people. They fall in love with the chase. They are less romantics and more hunters, predators dressed in polite clothing. For them, desire lives in the distance, in the running, in the delicious uncertainty of not knowing if you'll stay or go. And that's the cruel joke, isn't it? You thought you were failing because you weren't lovable enough. You twisted yourself into a paper doll, smiling wider, giving more, offering proof after proof of your devotion. But here's the truth you were never told. You didn't fail them. You bored them. Not because you're boring, but because you were too available. Avoidants are cats. Their partners too often are mice. And a cat is never fascinated by the mouse that sits obediently in its paw. No, fascination is born in the mouse that wriggles, escapes, dares to run into the shadows. They say avoidants fear intimacy. That's not quite true. They fear predictability. They fear the day you become solved. No riddles left, no corners unexplored. Because once you're solved, once you're simple, once you're safe, you're disposable. Here's the validation you deserve. You are not disposable. You were simply miscast in the wrong role. You tried to play the open book when what captivates the avoidant is the locked diary. So what do? You stop auditioning. You stop feeding the hunter with easy prey. You take your story back, your pace back, your mystery back. Because here's the secret no one whispers out loud. Avoidants do not respect what they catch. They respect what escapes. Chapter 2. The tragedy of the open book. There's a special kind of tragedy in being an open book to an avoidant. Not the noble Shakespearean kind. No, something darker. Something closer to handing your diary to a thief and then watching them sell the pages for scrap. You thought vulnerability would be your key. You thought if you bared your soul, stripped yourself of secrets, and gave them unfiltered access to your every thought and fear, they'd finally relax. You believed transparency meant intimacy, but here's the sinister twist. To an avoidant, transparency means target practice. They don't read your open book to love you more. They read to protect themselves. Every page you turn over becomes another calculation. She'll never leave. Look how desperate she is to be understood. He'll tolerate anything. Look how quickly he apologizes. They want me too much, so now I want them less. This is where it turns wicked. Your openness, your softness, the part of you that just wants to be loved. In their hands, it becomes a weapon. They don't even know they're doing it half the time, but they will unconsciously use what you reveal to confirm their favorite lie, that closeness is always a trap and distance is always safer. And so your love letters turn into evidence files. Your confessions become proof that they must remain untouchable. You bleed out, thinking it's a love language, while they catalog the stains like forensic scientists. Here's where you need to wake up. You were never too much. You were simply too solvable. And avoidants hate solvable. Mystery to them is oxygen. Explanation is chloroform. They can't resist what they don't fully know. But the second you give them the entire map of your heart, the game is over. They don't want the treasure anymore. They want a new labyrinth. Cruel? Yes. But don't mistake cruelty for your weakness. This isn't about you being unworthy. This is about them being incapable of handling something pure. They need distance to feel alive. They need puzzles to feel intrigued. And when you turned yourself into a solved equation, you became the one thing they despise most: predictable. So what's the antidote? Mystery. Not fakery, not manipulation, mystery. Hold back pieces of yourself. Let them ache to know you. Give them glimpses, not confessions. Become the riddle they can't stop trying to solve, instead of the book they closed and shelved. Because here's the sinister truth. The open book is always forgotten. The locked chest, though, that's the one they guard for life. Chapter 3. The Gothic Beauty of Mystery. Mystery is not an accident. It is an art form, a discipline, a performance staged in shadows. Most partners of avoidance treat mystery like a sin. They believe if they don't tell everything, if they don't give everything, they're committing some crime against love. But let's face it, being an open book with an avoidant is like leaving your coffin lid wide open. They'll poke, prod, examine, and then walk away once they're sure there's nothing left to unearth. Avoidants don't fall in love with answers. They fall in love with questions. Questions gnaw at them. Questions haunt them. Questions keep them circling you long after they swore they'd run. Mystery is perfume sealed in a locked glass bottle. They can see it, they can sense it, they can even imagine what it might feel like, but they can't hold it. That's the allure. That's what keeps them addicted. And here's the validation you deserve. You don't owe anyone your every secret. You don't owe them every detail of your heart, your past, your fears, your dreams. If they haven't earned the right to hold your story, why keep throwing it at their feet like scraps? The Gothic beauty of mystery is this. You stop bleeding for them. You stop performing vulnerability as if it were proof of your love. You let silence, subtlety, and restraint do the seduction for you. Because here's what avoidants hate most. Someone they cannot decode. They'll ghost a clingy partner without a second thought. They'll dismiss the predictable one in their sleep, but put them in front of a mystery. Someone who smiles but doesn't explain. Someone who loves without auditioning. And suddenly, their entire system malfunctions. That malfunction? That's desire. Avoidants bond to mystery the way moths bond to flame. They circle, they obsess, they return again and again, because the unknown terrifies them almost as much as it captivates them. And here's the twist that will save you. Becoming mysterious isn't about manipulation. It's about sovereignty. It's about refusing to turn your soul into a vending machine where they can press a button and get whatever reassurance they want. Mystery is not a game. It's dignity dressed in velvet and smoke. You want the avoidant to stay? Then don't hand them the ending of your story. Be the novel with missing chapters. The portrait with eyes that follow them across the room. The locked room at the end of the hall that they can never quite enter. That's the Gothic beauty of mystery. You don't trap them. You haunt them. Chapter 4. Silence as Power. Avoidants think they own silence. They wield it like a knife, cutting off conversations, retreating into distance, vanishing into thin air without explanation. They think silence makes them powerful, untouchable. But here's the truth they'll never admit. Silence is only powerful if you let it be. Most partners crumble under the weight of it. They rush to fill the void, to prove they're still worthy, to claw back scraps of attention. They send another text. They over-explain. They apologize for crimes they never committed. And the avoidant sits back, smug, confirming what they already believe. Closeness equals control. But here's how you win. You stop making their silence sacred. You stop treating it as a punishment. You start using it as theater. Because silence, in the right hands, isn't absence. It's presence amplified. A pause before the dagger. A room with no sound, where every footstep echoes louder. When you respond to their silence with your own calm, deliberate quiet, you flip the script. Suddenly, they're the ones leaning in. Suddenly, they're the ones wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, whether you're slipping away. This is how you take their favorite weapon and turn it against them. Not with cruelty, but with elegance. You don't sulk, you don't beg, you let your silence hum with the confidence of someone who doesn't need their attention to exist. Avoidants vanish to feel in control, but when your silence matches theirs, their control shatters. They realize they're not the only ghost in the room, and that unsettles them more than any desperate plea ever could. Silence isn't empty, it's a stage, and when you stop performing on it, the avoidant is left alone with their own echo. That echo, it drives them back to you. Stop being predictable. If silence is the avoidance weapon, predictability is their poison. Nothing kills their interest faster than someone who is always exactly where they expect, doing exactly what they expect, saying exactly what they expect. Avoidants aren't looking for partners. They're looking for puzzles. And once they think they've solved you, you become furniture, comfortable, reliable, and invisible. The sofa of their emotional living room, soft, familiar, and utterly forgettable. Here's the cruel irony. You thought predictability would make them feel safe. You thought if you were always available, always forgiving, always accommodating, they'd finally trust you. But avoidants don't respect what's easy. They respect what unsettles them, what keeps them guessing, what makes them wonder if they've underestimated you. Predictability is their sedative. Unpredictability is their addiction. Now let's be clear. Unpredictable doesn't mean chaotic. This isn't about playing childish games or manufacturing drama. True unpredictability is subtler, smarter. It's letting them see your worth without handing them the whole script. It's shifting the rhythm just enough that they can't tap their foot to the beat. One day, you answer their text immediately. The next, you don't, because you're busy living a life that doesn't revolve around them. One day, you let them in on a secret. The next, you let them wonder what else you're not saying. Not lies, not manipulation, just enough mystery to remind them they don't own you, they don't know you, and they never will completely. Avoidants live in a prison of their own design. They chain themselves to distance, convinced they're untouchable. But what rattles their cage is unpredictability. It reminds them that while they may retreat, they can't control what you'll do in their absence. And that unsettles them more than any threat of abandonment ever could. Here's your validation. You don't owe them consistency when consistency means erasing yourself. You don't have to be their steady, predictable caretaker, the human bandage who waits at the door with open arms. Predictability is a performance, and performances always end with applause and emptiness. Unpredictability, that's where obsession lives. That's where they lean forward, watching your every move, unsure if they're losing you or finally winning you. So stop being the partner they can set their watch to. Become the storm that rearranges their skies. Not destructive, just untamable. Because avoidants don't bond to comfort. They bond to the one person they can never quite predict. The unsolvable riddle. The unfinished symphony. The ghost they can't stop chasing. Chapter 6. The mirror they cannot escape. Avoidants are masters of evasion. They dodge closeness, sidestep intimacy, and sprint from anyone bold enough to demand their heart. But there's one thing even they cannot outrun, themselves, and that's where you come in. Most partners of avoidance make the fatal mistake of chasing. They try to convince, explain, beg, but every time you bend, they escape. Every time you collapse, they win. They never have to face the truth of who they are because you've made yourself the problem. But hold a boundary with icy calm. That's when the magic happens. That's when the avoidant catches their own reflection in the mirror you're holding, and nothing terrifies them more. See, avoidants spend their lives believing they're the victim of other people's neediness. Everyone's too much. Everyone suffocates me. Everyone lets me down. But when you stop overgiving, when you stop apologizing for existing, when you stop performing, suddenly the script changes. Suddenly, they're confronted with their own shadows. It's not pretty. Boundaries expose avoidance like sunlight exposes vampires. They hiss, recoil, retreat. They'll accuse you of being selfish, distant, cruel. But here's the sinister truth. They're not describing you. They're describing themselves. And that's the mirror they cannot escape. This is why becoming a mystery is so powerful. Because you stop being the distraction from their own reflection. You stop cushioning them from the emptiness they've been running from. You stand tall, you hold your ground, and you let them drown in their own silence. And here's your validation. This isn't cruelty. This is justice. You're not punishing them. You're refusing to carry their unfinished business on your back. You're handing it back to them, gift-wrapped in boundary lines. Avoidants bond with the one who refuses to be erased, the one who doesn't explain themselves to death, the one who can stare them down and say, "This is who I am. Take it or leave it." Because in that defiance, they see something they secretly crave, someone stronger than their fear. They may not admit it. They may even rage against it. But in the end, the mirror always wins. And the partner who held it steady, the one who didn't flinch, didn't chase, didn't crumble, that's the one they'll bond with for life. Because mystery unsettles them, boundaries expose them, and the reflection they cannot escape, that's the beginning of their obsession. Chapter 7. The Power of Withholding. Avoidants think they invented withholding. They ration affection, starve you of reassurance, dangle closeness like a poison fruit. And you, bleeding heart that you are, kept feeding them anyway, convinced if you just gave enough, they'd finally be full. But here's the cruel irony. You cannot feed someone who is committed to famine. The more you pour, the more they vanish. The more you prove your love, the more they devalue it. To an avoidant, abundance feels cheap. What terrifies them is scarcity, because scarcity keeps them chasing. So the power you've been missing? Withholding. And let me be clear, withholding is not punishment. It's not cruelty. It's conservation. It's learning that your energy is not a buffet for someone who only shows up when they're hungry. It's realizing your warmth has value precisely because you do not hand it out like Halloween candy to someone who never knocks on your door. When you withhold, you do something unthinkable to the avoidant. You disrupt the script. They're used to you bleeding for them. They're used to you filling the silence with apologies. They're used to you feeding them while starving yourself. But when you withhold, suddenly the roles reverse. Suddenly, they feel the pang of hunger. Suddenly, they're the ones leaning forward, wondering where the feast went. And here's where it gets deliciously sinister. Withholding isn't absence. It's presence with restraint. You still smile, but you don't spill. You still answer, but not immediately. You still love, but without auditioning. You become the well that looks full, but never gushes on demand. Avoidants can't help themselves. They are addicted to what they can't control, and nothing screams uncontrollable like someone who withholds on their own terms. Your validation, you've given too much for too long. You've been made to feel guilty for wanting love, guilty for expressing needs, guilty for bleeding openly. Withholding is not you becoming cold. It's you finally valuing your own warmth. Let the avoidant sweat in the silence. Let them wonder why your texts come slower. Let them ache at the sudden absence of your endless reassurance. You're not punishing them. You're teaching them the scarcity they respect. Because in the Gothic arithmetic of avoidant love, too much love makes them vanish. But the mystery of restraint, that keeps them circling you forever. Withholding is not cruelty. It is seduction, sharpened into survival. And to the avoidant, it's irresistible. Chapter 8. How to become unsolvable. Avoidants are obsessed with solving people. They break you down into patterns, catalog your weaknesses, file away your secrets like evidence. Once you're predictable, you're theirs. And once you're theirs, they stop wanting you. So here's the ultimate key. Don't let yourself be solved. Becoming unsolvable isn't about games or lies. It's about remembering that you are a labyrinth, not a hallway, that your soul isn't a bargain bin of secrets they can rummage through. It's a locked museum with velvet ropes and selective tours. Start with your story. You don't owe them every detail. When they ask, don't spill your entire history in one sitting. Leave gaps, leave shadows. Let them lean in and wonder. Mystery grows in the silence between sentences. Then, your time. Stop rearranging your world around them. Stop being on call like an emotional concierge. Let them feel your absence, not as punishment, but as proof that your life is bigger than their avoidance. The avoidant respects what they cannot monopolize. Next, your emotions. Withhold the endless reassurance. Resist the urge to explain your every sigh, your every mood. Let them guess. Let them sit in the discomfort of not knowing what page you're on. That discomfort is desire in disguise. Finally, your choices. Be unpredictable enough that they can't map you. Take the trip without warning. Change your routine. Surprise them with the fact that you have edges they've never seen before. Not chaos, mystery, a steady unpredictability that reminds them they'll never fully own you. Here's the validation you've been waiting for. You are not unlovable. You were simply too solvable. You gave away all your edges, and they mistook your surrender for weakness. But when you reclaim your shadows, when you stop being their open book and become the riddle that never ends, something shifts. The avoidant who once dismissed you begins to orbit you. They can't stop, because avoidants run from what they think they've solved, but they chase what they cannot decode. And if you become unsolvable, if you turn yourself into the mystery, they'll never unravel. You don't just capture their attention, you haunt them. That's how you flip the script. That's how you go from disposable to unforgettable. That's how you become the ghost they can't exorcise, the question that keeps them awake at night, the story with no ending. Unsolvable, untouchable, irresistible. Outro, the last laugh. Avoidants pride themselves on being unreadable, the untouchable ones, the mystery no one ever solves. But here's the irony. They're not the mystery. You are. They're just the scared child hiding behind puzzles and silence, praying no one notices how fragile they really are. And yet, you believed them. You believed you had to give more, explain more, prove more. You thought their walls meant you weren't enough. But now you see the truth. Their walls were never about you. They were about them. And your mistake was not weakness. It was generosity given to someone who confuses devotion with chains. But now the script has flipped. Now you know the secret. Avoidants don't fall for the open book, the endless giver, the predictable heart. They fall for what they cannot name. They chase what they cannot cage. They obsess over the one they cannot solve. So stop being solvable. Stop bleeding to prove you're alive. Become the question that lingers, the riddle without an answer, the locked door at the end of their hallway. Because avoidants don't bond with caretakers, they bond with mysteries. And when you become that mystery, they'll circle you forever. Not because you begged for it, not because you proved yourself worthy, but because you finally remembered what they always feared most. The power was never theirs. It was yours all along.